Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. My name is David Talbot. I am Managing Director and Head of Research here at Red Cloud Securities. I'm delighted to host a Red Cloud webinar on uranium today. We are going to hear from Basin Uranium CEO Michael Blady. Now, during today's webinar, he will provide an overview and outlook of the company. Then we will take your questions. You can type your questions into the chat box at any time, and we'll get to as many as we can. But before we kick things off, first we need to discuss the fine print. This Basin Uranium webinar, forward-looking statements may be made. I would direct listeners to their forward-looking statements outlined on page 2 of the Basin Uranium corporate presentation. That can be found on the company website, basinuranium.ca. For Red Cloud Securities, I'd highlight this webinar is for information purposes only. It should not be considered a solicitation or recommendation to buy or sell securities. We note that this call does not consider the particular situation or needs of individual investors, and participants should rely on their own investigation, seek their own professional advice before investing. So please see our most recent research located on the Red Cloud website for specific disclosures on Basin Uranium. Now, before Michael steps up, I would like to say a few words. The Selective Global Uranium Pure Play Index announced its ordinary index rebalancing last week, and this will be rebalanced as of the 5th of February. This Global Pure Play Index is really designed to provide exposure to a basket of uranium companies. So either companies that are primarily involved in uranium mining or exploration, or invest in and participate directly in physical uranium. And these indices are typically weighted and based on market cap, or they're equally weighted. Now, with this news, we anticipate there might be significant inflows into some specific uranium stocks by the ETF funds. And, the funds usually add to the position after the rebalancing date, so February 5th, but we would expect some buying by a broad suite of investors prior to that date in anticipation of those stocks being added. Now, that said, the uranium spot price does remain under pressure. It's either been flat or down since about the 11th of January, and it sank to 43.25 on Friday, according to UXC. So it's slightly higher than where we started spot this year. Now, uranium stocks, which often correlate well, the uranium prices are off a little bit more. The Sprott Physical Uranium Trust, for example, was flat last week. Meanwhile, the uranium stock peer group appears to be down about 5% week over week. And what is the reason of this? I think perhaps the big news is surrounding the uncertainty of the EU Green Deal. Now, while the EU is anticipated to formally approve the act in late January, it did miss the initial January 21st green taxonomy deadline. So essentially, this is the when they want to award gas and nuclear a green investment label. The act was provided on New Year's Eve when Parliament was in session. The MPs really wanted more time to scrutinize the document. But the inclusion of natural gas is a stickler for many here, suggesting that it really contradicts the EU's net zero emission strategy. And we concur it doesn't really make any sense to call some fossil fuels green. Others are worried about long-term spent nuclear fuel storage, something that's actually been happening for 50, 60 years. Pragmatists, let's say, are concerned about energy security, and they're arguing to include both gas and nuclear. So, ultimately, which way this goes, the taxonomy really won't forbid anything to happen, but it will be a tool to promote green activities. Now, while we do believe this EU news is important, it is a long-term situation. The World Nuclear puts out the numbers for its following nuclear reactor count. So there's 438 in operation. There's 57 under construction, 97 planned, and 32 proposed globally, according to the WNA. And now, while the EU, let's say including Turkey and excluding Russia, is home to about 31% of the nuclear power plants right now, it only contributes 21% of those under construction, 8 planned and 9 proposed. And those are dominated by France, the Ukraine, and the UK. So what we want to focus on here is that nuclear power growth is really coming from Asia, especially China, Russia, and India. So these countries alone represent 26% of the nuclear power plants in operation. They represent 51 of all reactors under construction, 76 planned, and 67 proposed. And that doesn't even count Japan or Korea and their 57 reactors combined. We don't expect this to change. In fact, China continues to accelerate its aggressive nuclear program. Russia is exporting more reactors for its global customers than anybody else. So we view that as good news. So, but we still wait an increase in long-term contracting to support uranium prices on a sustainable basis. And, we'd love uranium demand to be driven by end user buying, essentially the nuclear utilities that are using 177 million pounds of uranium per year. So with that, enough about the market. Michael, why don't I turn it over to you to talk about Basin?
Thanks, David. Appreciate you having me on today. So we'll get right into it. Basin Uranium Corp is a new uranium explorer. We acquired the Mann Lake project in October of 2021. I came on board with the company in November of 2021, and we've just started working on our permitting process and our company goals, which are to also look at and acquire other uranium projects in tier 1 jurisdictions across North America. So our first acquisition was Mann Lake, which fits well into that acquisition strategy, being located in the Athabasca Basin. So we are effectively one of the newest explorers in the basin and look to grow our project portfolio over the coming year here, as well as carry out significant amount of exploration. So with that, we can get into the presentation. So as David reiterated in his preamble there, we'll be making some forward-looking statements in this presentation. And you can read the disclaimer on your own. So Basin Uranium, newest explorer in the Athabasca Basin. So we have an option to acquire 75% of the Mann Lake project. It's about 8,500 acres, and it's located 45 kilometers to the west of the eastern edge of the Athabasca Basin. It has a very good address in terms of being surrounded by other uranium producers, and is in an area of the basin that seems to show significant enrichment in uranium. Some of the deposits that Basin's Mann Lake project is located near, obviously 25 kilometers southwest of the McArthur River mine, which has reserves of 392 million pounds of U3O8 at an average grade of just under 6.9%. And it's located 15 kilometers northeast of Camco's Millennium deposit, which has a resource of 105 million pounds U3O8 at a grade of just under 2.6% U3O8. So the Mann Lake project is right along the trend between these two deposits, and is a bona fide exploration target in our opinion, and we're looking to spend the money we've raised in 2021 on identifying hopefully some strong basement conductors on our project, and we'll get to that in a bit. So the project has had some historic exploration. About $3 million has been spent by previous explorers, and that includes over 5,400 meters of past drilling. The drilling did encounter some minor uranium mineralization, but it also did uncover a lot of the pathfinders that are seen at deposits like McArthur River. So we did intersect some strong boron mineralization and also some strong chloritized sections of drill core. And we are in the illite alteration corridor, which is also another hallmark of the McArthur River deposit. So the company's fully funded for its 2022 exploration program. We raised a combined $6.1 million in 2 private placements in Q4 2021. The most recent placement was done at 64 cents. It was a flow-through financing, so that money is earmarked for exploration at Mann Lake this year. We hope to be commencing our first drill program Q1, Q2 this year. We're just going through the permitting stages right now with Saskatchewan government. And that maiden program will be about 5,000 meters. We'll take a break, review the results, and continue building off of that program. We'll also be doing some pre-drilling work, including some field work and some geophysical work as well. So, as most people know, green energy is a big topic in today's world. In order to meet targeted world climate goals and combat today's soaring gas and oil prices, governments around the world are turning to modern nuclear energy technologies. Nuclear energy has the lowest carbon footprint for power generation compared to any other source and is the most reliable option for carbon-free baseload electricity generation. You can see it even surpasses wind and solar and hydro for its carbon footprint. So an interesting story I saw last week on global news here in British Columbia is BC has some very aggressive carbon goals. And by 2050, they want to shed a significant amount of the carbon pollution that they're producing. So right now we're in the process of building the Site C Dam in British Columbia, which is a very polarizing construction project, infrastructure project. And there's been some research done that says we would need about 28 Site C dams to meet our carbon goals for 2050. Now, the Site C Dam has been under construction for many years and the cost has ballooned to $16 billion. So for British Columbia, as its own entity, its own province, for it to reach its carbon goals, it's not really feasible to continue building overpriced hydroelectric projects. And this has kind of started a discussion with the government here in BC about looking at alternative sources of green energy, including nuclear. Nuclear has kind of had a bad name and connotation in BC ever since there was a moratorium on uranium exploration. But now scientists and politicians are now re-looking at it as a potential way to help BC in general meet its climate goals. Now, this is happening all over the world, across Europe, in Asia, some of the worst air quality in the world, and right here in Canada and the US. So it's very important that we find ways to lower our carbon footprint, and green energy is one of the keys to provide that base load power generation. So global demand in uranium is growing at the same time supply is becoming less certain. World nuclear generation capacity is set to continue its upward trend, with demand for uranium fuel increasing over the period to 2040. Intense development of new projects will be needed in the current decades to avoid potential supply disruptions. So this is a great slide, showing how global demand for electricity is going to be growing by 50% up until 2040. And now this doesn't really take into effect electrification of vehicles and transportation. Uranium demand, the most recent projection is calculated to grow by 3.1% year over year. And current global production shortfalls projected by UxC estimates annual deficit of 100 million pounds of uranium over the next 10 years. Where you're seeing supply coming out of countries and companies' reserves as opposed to being mined from the ground. So this bodes well for uranium explorers as well as uranium producers. Coupled with that, you have the increase in developers and physical uranium holding companies, which have been buying up uranium, which has been helping the spot price in the short term. As I'm sure most of you are familiar with Sprott Physical Uranium Trust, which has started buying uranium up last July. Now, our first project, Mann Lake, is located in the Athabasca Basin, which is a world leader in uranium mining. It's one of the premier mining jurisdictions in the world, with grades that are typically about 20 times the global average, and has a known uranium resource of 606,000 tons of U3O8. It's in a mining-friendly region in Canada that obviously is going to play a huge part in meeting future demand for uranium, and it's consistently rated as one of the best places to conduct mineral exploration and development. Right now, the Athabasca Basin counts for about 13% of the world's uranium production, and with the exceptional grade and with supply chain issues in other parts of the world, we look for that number to increase over the next 10 years. So with an average grade of nearly 2% in the Athabasca Basin compared to other parts of the world with grades of 0.1%, 0.2%, it is a great source of high-grade uranium that will continue to be exploited and provide many high-paying jobs and economic benefits for Canada. So the Mann Lake project, as you can see here in the map, located 45 kilometers inside the eastern edge of the Athabasca Basin. It was originally staked by SMDC as part of the Cree Lake Extension Project back in 1979. It has seen various stages of exploration throughout the years, with a lot of exploration focused on some of the surrounding claims, but limited exploration on the Mann Lake project itself. Recent operators in the early 2000s spent about $3 million working the claims and drilled about 5,400 meters. Right now, we're earning a 75% interest in the project from our partner, Sky Harbor Resources, through an option agreement where their stage share cash and exploration expenditures. In totaling about $6.6 million over a 3-year period, but we've already made the first payments, or about $6.3 million, with about $4 million of that being encompassed in exploration spending, which we plan to do over the next couple of years. One of our neighbors on the project is also called Mann Lake, and it's a joint venture between Cameco, Denison, and Areva. They were targeting basement conductors, similar to what we'll be targeting in our 22 exploration program. And in 2014, they intercepted a drill intercept of 2.31% U3O8 over 5.1 meters. And this is kind of the hole there. And obviously here's the Mann Lake project that we'll be drilling. So we are very focused on using our geophysical tools that we'll be conducting later this year to create some exciting drill targets for our shareholders. So, as I've discussed, there's been very limited drilling on the project. Most of the drilling tested northwest trending structures. So they're testing these structures running through the project. So our plan this year, following our geophysical surveys, is to focus more on testing northeast structures. Test these basement conductors that are running through the project. McArthur River located up here, and then Millennium to the south. So over the winter here and over the Christmas holidays, we've been compiling the historic airborne mag, gravity, EM surveys from previous operators, also an airborne TEM survey. And we've been compiling it all into a database, working with our exploration contractor, Terralogics, to help plan our EM survey here and to cover areas of the property that didn't really have any coverage with geophysics. So our past geophysical surveys really have only focused on, just need to clear this part of the project, kind of right here. So we'll be extending our survey grids to the south, to the north, as well as covering some areas of interest that have been previously covered. So as you can see, the gray shaded areas on this map, those are the main northeast conductive corridors. And for us, as well as looking at the structural interpretations from gravity surveys, those are going to be our main targets for 2022. We'll be focusing first on extending these corridors further into the property through the ground EM. We're going to be doing a moving loop ground EM, and then searching for any bends, kinks, deflections of these corridors. Mann Lake, the app name Mann Lake project, immediately to the east of us, has found success drilling these bends of these conductors. So the bends are appearing to concentrate uranium, as shown right here to the east of the project, or to the east with the bends. So that's going to be what we're looking for. Right now, we're still in the process of just consolidating all of our geophysical data and permitting these claims. So for permitting right now, we're looking to do 15,000 meters of diamond drilling, as well as add about another 50 to 60 line kilometers of clearing to provide line cutting for our surveys. So the 15,000 meters of drilling will not be undertaken all at once, and it will kind of happen in stages. First stage will be approximately 5,000 meters, and we'll be building on those results to further delineate targets for our second phase. So right now, we've got the permitting underway. Everything was submitted in December to the Saskatchewan government. We're hoping to receive permits here, obviously in Q1. And right now we're currently working in parallel. We're lining up our contractors for geophysical surveys, specifically moving loop EM survey. That'll be a much more comprehensive survey than previous surveys undertaken on the property, as well as drilling contractors. So right now we're having some good success in finding contractors that are willing and able to work within our time parameters and budgets. And we're going to be hopefully finalizing these over the coming weeks. So when we do ultimately receive our permit from the Saskatchewan government, we'll be able to spring into action very quickly. I don't want to go into too much detail on our exploration program and our drill plan, things like that. One, because we're still waiting to have a comprehensive report done on all the historic geophysical surveys. And two, because we haven't received permits for our permitted drill locations yet. But as soon as those are received, we'll definitely discuss the work program for 2022 in more detail. Now, also, for any of you that have been following the company, last week we did announce a LOI for a project in another Tier 1 uranium jurisdiction in North America, in eastern Utah, in the LaSalle complex. And it's an exciting property for us because it is adjacent to Energy Fuels project. And this project is one that has a number of historic drill holes, almost 500 historic drill holes on it, with significant uranium mineralization in drill core. And it's part of the LaSalle complex, which is also tends to be enriched in vanadium as well. So along with uranium, you're getting about, in some instances, 5 or 6 to 1 ratio of vanadium mineralization. And this is all deposited in sediments from the ancient LaSalle River, which drained a volcanic complex to the west. And this river was a meandering river over a large flat alluvial plain where the mineralization from the volcanic activity was dissolved in the water and then deposited in the sediments of the river. Typically what we're finding down there and what Energy Fuels is finding is anywhere where the paleo channel was located in slower moving sections of the river, such as oxbows and oxbow lakes. That's typically where you're finding higher concentrations of uranium and vanadium. So we're encouraged to see that there looks like there's at least 2 paleo oxbows on this project, and we're just undergoing our due diligence and putting together a database on it right now, and hopefully making an acquisition of this project in the coming 45 days or so, and adding to our project portfolio of another Tier 1 jurisdiction uranium exploration project. So management directors, due to the early nature of our company, myself as CEO, Joe Leonard's our CFO, Fred, Kevin, and Desmond are directors of the company, and they all have a lot of experience in the junior mining sector. And right now we're also looking at adding a few additions with some in-depth knowledge in the Athabasca Basin as well as in U.S. uranium deposits. So we'll have more information on board and management additions in the coming weeks. So just to kind of summarize the cap table, we have a very tight cap table with just over 23 million shares issued outstanding. There's 3.65 million warrants with a strike price of 75 cents. These were done with our flow-through financing that was completed in December. The 1.2 million options and just about 930,000 RSUs for management directors and officers. So fully diluted, we're sub 30 million on the cap table. Working capital, got about $5.5 million. We'll hopefully be spending, or we will be spending, at least $3.5 million on Mann Lake this year in 2022. And we're going to be kind of almost doubling the spend from previous operators. So right now, market cap's probably a bit out of date. I didn't have a chance to update the market cap numbers on this presentation as I just became a new dad a few days ago. So yeah, right now we're sitting probably about in the teens for market cap. And just one more slide to finish things off is peer comparison. You can see here relative to our peers in the basin, we are the smallest, and we're looking to hopefully have some growth in market cap through acquisitions and through successful exploration work. So our story is just at the beginning. We're just getting going here, and we're looking to have a big 2022 with lots of excitement through our acquisition strategy, as well as through exploration success.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Michael. Great presentation. And by the way, congrats on becoming a new father.
Thank you very much. I'm very tired.
No, for sure, for sure. So we're now going to kick off the Q&A portion of the webinar. So a reminder to everybody online that they can type their questions into the chat box at any time, and we'll get to as many as we can. Now, we already have a few. So, Michael, it is a little unusual for uranium exploration companies to explore both in the Athabasca Basin and in the Southwest U.S. Now, was this a plan from the outset with Basin Uranium, or is this simply an opportunistic arrangement?
This was a plan. We wanted to be North American focused. We see a large opportunity in the U.S. with their policy for clean energy and green energy. And in addition, I think it helps us attract more investors to our story. The U.S. market, obviously, if you can tap into investors down there, is such a bigger base of potential shareholders and investors. So, and with what Energy Fuels is doing down there and the success they've had, it just helps bring a little bit more of a light to our company and shows us that, we are in looking in the right places and we're trying to conduct ourselves the right way.
Right. You mentioned, investors. Could you perhaps give us a breakdown on your offering that was in Q4? How well was it received? Did retail and institutional investors participate? Where was it priced?
Sure. So the hard dollar raise we did in October, it was priced at 35 cents. Initially, we went out to do $2 million. We had well over $3 million of interest. We capped things off at $2.5 million. We had a very supportive group of brokers and people that are working very closely with the company take down a significant amount of that placement. The flow-through financing we did in combination with Pear Tree Securities, and it was led by PI Financial, where we had a significant amount of institutional as well as retail subscribers in that one.
Okay, and does that mean you are now cashed up for everything you want to do this year?
Yes, for Mann Lake, we are fully cashed up. In Utah, if we do go ahead with that acquisition, we have a $1 million exploration commitment to fulfill on that project. So, I think one of the things we're always looking for capital, and as a junior exploration company, you never stop looking for capital. So I'm sure we will be raising additional funds in the coming 12 months, and with a low float with less than 30 million shares fully diluted, we have the ability to do that.
Mm-hmm. And you do have some in-the-money warrants as well. What are the strike on those, and how much might those bring in?
I don't believe the warrants are in the money right now. They were at 75 cents, the price.
Okay.
They were in the money.
Yeah. Okay. I saw ITM on the presentation, so I assume they were in the money. So, okay.
I think our stock was trading at just over $1 on that day, so that may be why.
Okay, sounds good. So, can you chat a little bit about your technical team and its experience? Have any of them explored for uranium in the past?
Yeah. So Tim Andenberry, who's our qualified person, he's had extensive experience in the United States with uranium exploration as well as in the Athabasca Basin. Our key contractors in Saskatchewan, we're using Terralogics, which is out of Cranbrook, BC, and they have been running, designing, and carrying out exploration in the Athabasca Basin for many, many years now. And they have a very good understanding of what needs to be done and what we need to look for out there. But we are trying to add to that team currently. More minds, the better.
Okay. And the initial project that caught their eye here is the Mann Lake project, as you said, came from Sky Harbor, and this is in the Athabasca Basin. Now, when do you plan to drill this project, and how much will you have been spent on the property by the end of this year?
Yeah, so we do have a bit of a flow through spend commitment. Obviously, with completing our flow through financing, we'll be spending most likely the entire offering, unless for some reason we do have another project that we're allowed to spend flow through on that comes in. But we'll be spending $3.6 million there. We'll probably spend about $500,000 on geophysical and other geochemical surveys, and then $3 million on drilling.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And what really attracted you guys to the Mann Lake project? Is it jurisdiction? Is it an area play close to Mann Lake JV?
Yeah, jurisdiction, the address, partners, being able to work with Sky Harbor. They have a lot of experience in the basin. They've been helping us out as well with the data compilation, with generating targets, and just being able to work with a very experienced operator out there made it an easy choice to be our first project.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then, do you maybe can you make a comment on the basement stratigraphy on the project, or the alteration, what the graphitic horizon looks like?
Sure thing. So right now the basement has been intercepted in drill, or the unconformity has been intercepted in drill core from as low as 550 meters up to 665 meters in the previous drilling. Still, we're not sure if we're going to be dealing with a basement hosted uranium deposit, uranium mineralization, or a unconformity hosted uranium mineralization. So, right now indications look like potentially unconformity. So with the increased boron and other alteration minerals, we're just still trying to put together a good kind of isopac map where we can see what we're looking at. With only 10 drill holes on the project and them being widely spaced out, it's a bit difficult to do this at that time, but it's one of the things that we've been working on with Terralogics here over the last few weeks.
Mm-hmm. And do you have a preference for shooting for those basement rocks, or hitting something in the sandstones or at the unconformity?
I wouldn't say I have a preference myself personally. I think we really want to go after these basement conductors first and foremost, and then we'll see where that takes us.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then what level of support do you have from Indigenous communities?
So we've been going through the process now for a couple months, and we've been reaching out to all of the parties involved and the stakeholders that are in the area. So right now we have signed not a communications agreement, but basically a info sharing agreement, and the project has been reviewed by certain First Nations groups. We've received some comments back from them that still bode very well for the project, and we're working with them to resolve any issues that they may have. But at this point, there hasn't been anything significant that's come up. We're hoping to, obviously use as many of the local people we can, service providers, and try and keep as much of this flow through money we're spending in the local communities.
Great, perfect. Okay, thank you very much. So I guess moving on, you guys announced last week an LOI to acquire the Mesa uranium project in Utah. Now, when do you expect to have a definitive deal arranged for that acquisition?
Probably about 45 days.
Okay.
I'm still trying to acquire some of the data that's quite important for our purposes. So we're working through that now, and if we acquire it, we should have a definitive agreement by probably early March.
Okay, great. Now, Energy Fuels, their LaSalle project is right next door. They've got almost 5 million pounds of uranium, 24 million pounds of vanadium. Are there historical resources on your property that you know of?
There are some historical resources, but they aren't NI 4311 compliant, so I don't feel comfortable talking about them. In those 495 drill holes that were drilled at Ray Mesa, they did put together some small resource, ISO packs, but I don't really want to discuss those because I haven't had enough time to accurately and properly review those yet.
Okay, so the next step then is probably go in here and drill off some resources for yourself. Do you have much work to do before you can get the drills on site? When might you be able to do something like that?
Are you referring in Canada or in
no, in the U.S. at LaSalle.
In the U.S., yes. So right now, the majority of the claims are BLM land, and they are permitted right now. So right now, we won't have much of an issue getting out there and performing exploration work. There has been a bit of supply chain labor issue down in those areas. I've seen a number of companies in surrounding states that have been trying to do work that have had some difficulties finding contractors. So we haven't discussed that in detail yet, but it's definitely one of the things that's high up on my list to try and look at before we get too far down the path with this project.
Okay, and then what would your thoughts be? Would your initial project simply confirm mineralization, or is there opportunity to expand zones? Have you been able to really chew over what you want to do there?
Yeah, so all the zones are open for in multiple directions for drilling more uranium mineralization down there. Most of the holes are quite tightly spaced, 50-meter spacing on those. So we would be looking at, one, confirming a few of the historic high-grade holes, and then stepping out and increasing the footprint of the mineral.
Okay, great. And you also mentioned vanadium. They're 5 to 6 to 1 vanadium over uranium. Would you focus on delineating high-grade vanadium zones, or really treat it as a byproduct of uranium?
Right now, it's too early to tell, and I'll tell you why. All the historic drill logs we have and assay logs, that they were never assayed for vanadium at that time. So there's a big kind of question mark there. What are the grades? And if they are in line with our neighbors at the LaSalle and Energy Fuels, it could be a nice win for us and for the project. But right now, there's no data on vanadium.
Right. Okay. And somebody's asking here, 500 meters drilled historically in Utah, but I think that's 500 drill holes.
500 drill holes. That's correct. Yeah.
And what sort of grades were intersected in those?
About 40,000 meters, I believe it was. So well over 120,000 feet. So the grades, they varied from barren, obviously, to over 1% uranium, over tens of feet, 20 feet, 25 feet, right? So some intercepts were as thick as 40 feet of uranium mineralization of almost 1%. So it varies, and a lot of it comes down to how well this system is preserved and what kind of faulting and folding, and if there's any, mobilization of that mineralization while it's been preserved. So variable right now, but I'd say for U.S. and for being outside the Athabasca Basin, potentially high grade.
Great. Okay. There's also a question here about who your partners are down in Utah. So I guess that would be the vendors of the project. Has that been made public?
It hasn't yet. So it's a private company that is kind of has been put together and run by a land management company down there. So as we get further down through our due diligence, that'll all be made public in our filings.
Yeah, but it sounds like they are looking forward to sharing on the upside opportunity here because they're looking for your stock.
Yep, that's correct. And any shares that are issued, if we do go forward with this transaction, they'll be escrowed as well. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So yeah, we've had a lot of questions here. I guess maybe just to wrap it up, as far as exploration expansion goes, are you considering further acquisitions in the Athabasca Basin? Are you looking elsewhere in the U.S.? You did mention one more tier 1 jurisdiction, so I'm curious.
We're looking at a number of things right now. I think some of the larger companies in the space, they go through a constant cycle of acquiring projects, reviewing them, doing work on them, and then shedding them. So like a snake sheds its skin, we're always looking for opportunities from other companies, especially companies that are larger and more prominent in the sector than we are.
And I guess last question here, what can you tell us about OTC listing timing?
All the paperwork's been filed, and I'm just waiting on TTC eligibility. Hopefully, I was expecting to have it by the end of the month, but very soon.
Well, that can still happen. We still have a few more hours. So
yeah, you bet.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much, Michael Blandy, for speaking to us. For speaking to us today. Thank you, everybody else, for tuning in. A reminder that Red Cloud will be back on Wednesday afternoon when Tim Lee sits down with Stratabound Minerals. That's February 2nd at 2 p.m. Eastern. So thank you very much, everyone. Have a great day. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you. Take care.